Hello and welcome to the Content Advantage, a talk show about content for content professionals. I'm Scott Abel, and with me today is my co-host, Megan Gilhooly. Megan, how are you?
Good, Scott. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm getting a little feedback here. I'm hoping that test our microphones here. So whoever is getting a little feedback, there we go. If you go on mute, maybe that'll help. So thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Yeah, there is a little bit of feedback, so we'll see how that works. But I am Megan Gilhooly from Zoomin, and Zoomin helps organizations around the globe unify technical product content experiences. We do this by bringing all of your product content together under one digital roof. We do so by ingesting content that's created in multiple sources, and we deliver it out to multiple places, including inside your community, inside your customer service site, in the product itself, or most commonly inside a standalone state-of-the-art documentation portal. We can do this regardless of the source of your content. It doesn't matter where it was created or published, whether it's structured or unstructured, it doesn't matter. We've found that making all of your content available in a single portal allows customers to self-serve more efficiently, and doing so can really help a company reduce support costs as well as improve product adoption. So today we've invited someone who has a little bit of experience with this. We've invited Race Bannon, who is at Oracle PeopleSoft, and he's going to talk to us about the benefits of unifying product content into a single online portal. So we're going to learn some of the lessons he learned along the way. We're very excited to have you here. Welcome to the Content Advantage, Race.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course,
Race,
course.
Before we get started today.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you're going to ask Race to give a little background. I was just going to say, Race, if you could check your microphone too to see if it's maybe picking up some feedback. I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit just to see if we can eliminate that for the rest of the show. Do you hear that anymore, Megan?
Nope, sounds better for sure.
Okay, let's continue on. Sorry about that.
Okay,
no problem.
Very good. So yeah, if you could just give us a little bit of background about yourself and your connection to today's show, that would be awesome, Race.
Sure. I've been in some version of IT since about 1983. Started in legal, entertainment, banking, mostly from a consulting standpoint, and then eventually moved into software development. So I've kind of run the gamut of industries in terms of IT. And I've been with Oracle for many, many years, and started with PeopleSoft, and then Oracle acquired us. And Oracle's been extremely good to me, I have to say, and I have decided to stay with the company for a very, very long time because they've been so good to me.
Very nice. And you've been there how long?
Oh, I started with PeopleSoft in 1998.
Wow.
So yeah, a long time. And I have stayed there because they have been so good to me. I have a great boss, great team. In fact, we're going to talk a lot about the portal, and I want to sort of give a heads up that I am kind of the messenger in that regard, because I was only on the periphery of many of the portal decisions, even though I'm fully aware of them. But the visionary at my company was Greg Parikh. He thought about pulling things together into a single portal at our company. Jessica True is kind of our technical guru around all that. And Satish Bedagauda, I hope I said his name correctly, is our graphics designer, and he was instrumental in doing it as well. So I have to give props to them. They really did an amazing job, and want to give them credit where credit's due.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, it always takes a team in order to be successful. Usually you can try to do it on your own, but that's not always the best way to go about it. Hey, before we continue the show, thanks, Race, for joining us, and thank you to our audience. If you're new to the Bright Talk platform, let me tell you a few things. Today's show is being recorded, which means that you can use the same URL you're using to watch the live show right now. You can return about half an hour after the show is scheduled to end today, and it'll magically return into a recording that you can watch on demand, or you can even share with other people, and we hope that you will. We can't see or hear you. We don't have access to your camera or microphone, so you don't have to worry about that. There's probably a few of you breathing a sigh of relief right about now. You can ask a question at any time during the show by using the Ask a Question tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. If you click on the button there, it will open up a panel that will allow you to text us a question. We won't be able to text you back an answer, so it's not that kind of system, but you can queue up a question for me, and Megan and I will ask as many as possible of Race during the show, and at the end we'll allow for extra Q&A time as well. Additionally, there's some content available in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. You can access documents provided by the speaker and also by our sponsor today, Zoom Software, along with troubleshooting information in case you get stuck or have any challenges using the software today. There's a 40% discount on ebooks from our friends at XML Press, which are also available there. You will be able to access the discount code and save 40% off any ebooks in their library. We thank them for making that offer available to you today. And on the way out, if you would be so kind to give us a 1 through 5 star rating. 5 is a high rating, 1 is a low. There's also a little field in there in which you can type the reason that you gave us the rating or provide us some feedback that you'd like to share with us, and we'd encourage you to do so. I'll remind you about that at the end of the show as well. Okay, today's show is brought to you by Zoom Software, and I'm going to let Megan dive right into today's topic.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. So yes, let's get right to it. I am curious. Now, I know you said that there were 3 others that were sort of instrumental in doing this whole unification process, but before they recognized that need, what were some of the signals? I'm sure that you've had discussions with them about this. What were the signals that they needed to unify, that they needed a single portal and they wanted this one-stop information shop?
I think the vision of my boss, Greg Parikh, in particular, was cobbled together from years of people saying, where is this? A customer saying, wait, I have to go here, 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 and here to get all of the information I need. And it's not only customers externally, but there are people internally who are looking for things constantly. And we would have to point them to different places. And it simply made sense to unify it all in one place. So it was really customer demand, customer commentary, and support, calling and saying, well, where do I point a customer to this? Well, you go here, 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 here. And pretty soon you do that enough times and you realize it would make a lot of sense to put it into one place if possible, which we did.
Very nice. And I imagine there were probably some issues with consistency of the content that lived here, 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 and here, right? That you had to fix.
To some extent, not necessarily in most cases. In many cases, we were able to link to the content directly in the portal and not alter the source content much at all. We were lucky in that regard. But there absolutely could be instances where that could happen, where you have to modify a little bit in order to make sure it works with the portal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I just wrote down the best words. I think this is a criteria now for whether you need to unify your content. And this is just the 3 words that you said is the most common question was, where is this?
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of people asking where things are. Chances are you need to help them find it.
Anyone who has worked in any medium to large business has had a flurry of emails from various people inside and outside saying, where do I find this? Where is it?
Yeah.
And the problem sometimes is that you haven't had to reference that for a little while, and you have to do a little bit of research and then find out, well, now it's there, it's there, it's there. So having it in one place really makes a huge difference for everybody, externally and internally.
Well, and you mentioned the difference. How do you know that you made a dent in the problem of where is this? And were you able to prove things like increase customer satisfaction, or were there some metrics that you used to say, hey, we're doing better, we are helping them find this?
The answer is yes. I'm not going to divulge the metrics specifically because that's an internal thing. But the probably the biggest thing, I mean, I was sitting at a conference kiosk at our company conference, and customers would walk up, and I had the portal on the screen, and customer after customer after customer would say, that's one of the best things you've ever done. I go to one place and I find it, and it's easy. And I have one place I can tell all of my employees and my whoever to go to get information if I need to find information. I heard that over and over and over. So just in one instance, one 2-day period, I must have had 30 people walk up to me and say exactly that thing. So apart from the metrics, which certainly can prove it, there's nothing better than your customers coming to you and saying, that's one of the best things you've ever done.
And do you think that it's more believable, the leadership too, when they recognize or they actually see it themselves? Like if they were to come up to the booth and overhear somebody, is it kind of like a shocking thing for somebody to come up and comment on your documentation in a positive way?
Well, sometimes that's true because when I work in the software industry, the software is king, and so very often they're talking about the software itself, but it is a big plus when they actually talk about the documentation, and not just the documentation, but the ease of accessing that documentation. And the ability to not only access documentation, but any related content that goes along with the documentation, whether that's video or pointing to curriculum or whatever that might be. So when it's within earshot of somebody who's fairly high up in the software realm of your company, and they overhear, oh, we love this, that makes a big difference.
That's great.
And,
that's nice to hear.
I've had a similar experience when I actually brought Zoomin into a company I was working at in the tech industry, and we got exactly the same thing. It flipped from customers saying, where is stuff? And we hate your portal to, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can actually find what I want. So it's such a big bump. But I want to talk about something a little different. So you've worked in non-tech, now you're at tech. And so there's some content teams have this struggle, especially in large enterprises. And I know because I worked at Amazon and I had a similar struggle where the development team wants to build their own stuff and they think they can just like spin up a doc portal like this and it's no problem. And, it's in my mind, it's sort of like me saying, well, I read a book on C++ back in the day. So sure, I'll code something for you, right? Like it's that ludicrous to me, but to them, they think, oh no, I can do content. So at Amazon, we had our own stuff. We built everything, right? We were a tech company. We weren't going to bring stuff on from third parties. We just wanted to build. But what I saw happening was that we would put in for funding. We would get funding for this new, cool, shiny thing. We'd get it to a minimum viable product. We'd throw it out there. We'd get people to adopt it. And then the next new shiny thing came along, we'd lose funding. And so our experience was great until it stagnated. And then it would just stagnate for years and years and years. And so I've learned firsthand that not only does this take internal resources to sort of build your own, but that there's a customer experience cost to it over time. And so I'm wondering, now I know you can't be overly specific about the challenges that you faced internally at Oracle, but when people in the audience are thinking through this, should I build, should I buy argument, what cautions would you give them to sort of building their own, just sort of spinning up their own content portal?
I have many coffee shop conversations with people at tech startups. I have many conversations with people in all industries in companies of various sizes. And it's astounding how often I hear a story kind of like you're talking about, where they attempt to gather everything in one place and they really do not realize how many people it takes, the kind of technical acumen it takes, and the gotchas that will only be found after you've built it and not before. Whereas if someone has some experience, a company that actually does portal work, they have already got all the gotchas, in their repertoire of experience. And so your portal is not going to magically go down in the middle of the night because you didn't think of that gotcha that a portal company would have thought about. So I am a big believer in buying if you can, and using a third party if possible, because I think that nothing replaces the experience that a company or a service has that is dedicated to a particular area of tech. My own company has a tremendous amount of expertise in many, many areas. I would obviously, if I was pitching to a customer, I would be saying, you're going to buy this, this, and this from Oracle. But the point is, nothing replaces the experience that someone has in their specialty. And you only have to have one customer get really PO'd in the middle of accessing a portal in a critical moment, like during an implementation or something that could really go south.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh, I should have gone with somebody who knew what they were doing.
I worked for a mortgage. I worked for a mortgage software development firm in the 90s. And I remember that they segued to making kind of a plan. They wanted to be the first company to allow somebody like us to use a computer to get an auto-generated like 30-second decision on a loan, right? And they wanted the software to decide for them. And they were very innovative at what they did, and they built an entire system, and it was seen as kind of revolutionary. And they went out without any concern for their documentation. And they sold that stuff to big financial services companies who all wanted to, of course, process loans in 30 seconds or less. And when they recognized one customer who did a bunch of work and found out that the documentation was sloppy, it wasn't accurate in the same place, you could go to different places. And so they actually took the clause in their contract that said if it wasn't, that they promised to be fully documented. And then they said, look, it's not documented fully, it's not accurate, it's in different places, we cancel our contract. Wouldn't have been a big deal, except for somehow that news made it to the mortgage industry press. And all of a sudden it was in a magazine article, and all the other companies were having the same problems, but had never went down the road of we're going to cancel. But since they saw that somebody else was canceling, it created a tidal wave of cancellations of the contracts. And all of a sudden the leaders are like, wait a minute, how did our documentation cause this? I thought the writers were busy writing, and they were, but it was everywhere. And they thought they could build it themselves because they built the engine to mortgage.
One other thing is that I think that, I mean, I work within a software company, but imagine you work in one of many any other industries. And very often in those IT departments, they have some people who are very specialized in doing X, Y, and Z, none of which is portal development, none of which is gathering information from various sources and putting it in one place. So even though they have the internal people that can do it, supposedly, they don't have that kind of specialty. And I think that you really run a risk in turning over all of your important customer facing information to people who may not know how to present it. So I'm a big fan of going where the expertise is.
Now, Race, you may have just been lucky too. Maybe a lot of viewers on our show don't have the situation that you do, where you have a supportive employer who got it. Somebody at leadership level got it, the need to support this and make it happen in the way that you did it. But if you could give advice to our viewers at home who are thinking, okay, I get it. It makes sense. How do I sell this to leadership? What kinds of things would you suggest that they try to communicate to their leadership to show the value of making such an investment, whether they buy or build, but just bringing it all together, since that seems to be the end user benefit?
Well, the golden rule of business, customer satisfaction. So if you have access to customers and can talk to them directly, and especially if you can build a case story around why building a portal, or not building a portal, but accessing things via a portal would be an important plus for the company. Customer stories always rule. The customer is they drive what you do. And if you can go to customers, maybe you could do a survey if you have access to that, to survey capabilities and access to the customers. Very, very powerful. One of the other things I think is really good is when you're going to a decision maker, especially somebody at like C-level who thinks at the mile-high level at all times, prototype, show something physical. Show, if you could, even if it's a static image of what a potential portal might look like, and sort of walk them through it. If they can see it visually, I think it has a lot more impact than if you're just talking about it and making them picture it in their head. Right. So, and if you can have a working prototype, even if it's one of those wireframe clickable things that is really rough and it doesn't have a lot of detail in it, if they can then see, oh, I could go to documentation here and curriculum here and watch a video here and click on this and go right to support, that's really cool. That's what I would do if I was trying to pitch it to a decision maker and say, this is why a portal would be important.
That's really
Awesome.
practical advice.
One of the things that I did back in the day when I brought Zoomin in, before getting to even like who I was going to buy or what I was going to do, just to prove that we needed to unify our customer experience and make it cleaner, I actually went to other companies within our industry that were sort of tangential, maybe not direct competitors, and grabbed inspiration. And I actually put, here's what our current content looks like. And here's the inspiration we're going for. So we want the expand collapse that's on this site, and we want the TOC that's on this site, and so just putting some of those inspiration there so that people can go, oh, I see what you mean by a watch list, or oh, I see what you mean by whatever. So sometimes you can just kind of go surf and find the things that you like that provide that inspiration. That can be very helpful as well.
I like that idea.
Yeah,
and the other thing is that each industry is going to have its own particular flavor of information that needs to be gathered into one place. I mean, I work in software, that's a particular kind of set of information, but if I was in insurance or I was in banking and I was the entertainment industry, and any particular specialty, they're going to have their own sets of information that might differ somewhat. And the only way you're going to know what to gather is if you do exactly what you said, is kind of
right.
Do your research.
Race, some companies grow by developing new things internally, and then they, harvest and some resources and they put them together and they create some new stuff. Some buy other companies and they merge them, they acquire them and bring them in. When they do, you have these different thought processes, right? People who are doing things differently in a department right next door to you, or people who are doing things differently in a total different company. And now you're asking them to do it in your way. Can you give some advice on how you might engage other content creating teams when you want them to try to change and do something in a unified way versus the, hey, we've been doing it this way over here. Can't we just keep doing it over here? You guys go unify, but we'll stay over here and do this. Have you had any of those kind of opportunities to talk to people and try to engage them and to get them to do what you want and you think is best for the company?
Yeah, I think there's instances where you do that. And I think the number one thing that you can do is put a lot of front-end thought time into exactly what you want the end result to look like. Right. So that when you go to anybody, you are showing them why directly, not in some ethereal, theoretical way that they can't picture, but say, this is how we're going to present information, or this is how a customer consumes information, or this is how internal people consume information. Because often your audience is just as much internal as it is internal, depending upon the company. And only then can they sort of see, oh, I can understand why my deliverable has to change a little bit because it needs to fit this paradigm. Right. But if you're saying change for change's sake, or issuing it as a directive, we're human beings, we resist. If we've been doing documentation for 10 years this way, and you say, we need to change it, you have to tell them why. You have to give them the value add of what it is that's going to benefit the consumers of that information if you change it, not just issue an order. Nobody likes an order. Right. Everybody likes to show why it would be a good thing to do.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And you brought up value. And so I want to kind of dig into that a bit. One of the things we were able to do at Amazon, which was fabulous, was we had a ton of data and we were able to research really, really well, right? So we were able to put out a poll and we did this thing called the Customer Trust Index, where we were looking specifically at content along 4 pillars of what we considered things that add or erode trust, right? And those things were consistency, helpfulness, accuracy, and engagement of the content. And we put out poll questions that got us sort of a really data-driven number about this, right? And of course, we could do this to hundreds of thousands of people. So we were very lucky in that way. What we found was with those 4 pillars, trust was trust was definitely being impacted most negatively by consistency, which is why I asked the consistency issue earlier. So what we found in diving into it was that the consistency issue was specifically between help content and what agents were saying. And so we were able to use that data and go fix it. And so that there was a tremendous amount of value in understanding how the content team could work differently in order to improve the customer experience and build customer trust there. So knowing that you're kind of doing a similar thing here, do you have some sort of evidence that bringing this content together into a single portal really has impacted sales or customer loyalty or customer trust? What are those, like, what are the KPIs that you look at?
Yes, we do have that. A lot of the proof, quote unquote, is proprietary. I really can't talk about the specific proof,
Right.
But we absolutely know that the customers, you talk about consistency and trust. Documentation in particular is where we and everyone finds that if you bounce from product to product to product and go to the documentation, and it looks different and it functions differently, and the headings and the sections are titled in different ways, and the navigation is different, you have a very confused customer who is suffering from lack of consistency, and therefore they no longer trust that you're doing the right thing for them. So we had absolutely a lot of experience making sure that we standardized across documentation and other types of deliverables as well, not just documentation, to make sure that there was consistency, and it absolutely built trust. There's no doubt about it. And we would hear from customers constantly that, once again, bringing everything together in the portal was tremendous, and that we did it was a big benefit. But the consistency, even once they go into the portal, of the various deliverables to which they can, that they can access, has a tremendous benefit in engendering trust amongst the customers and amongst internal. I keep saying internal, but when you're in a large company, your internal audience is extremely important, because if they can't get the information they want, their productivity goes down. If their productivity goes down, your profit goes down, your customer satisfaction goes down. So yeah, completely agree with you about consistency.
Thank you for sharing that. Hey, for the audience members that are expecting the show to end at the 30-minute mark, it looks like we're going to go over by a few minutes. Race, can you stay and take a few questions?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So audience members, if you have a question in mind, you can use the Ask a Questions tab located in your webinar viewing panel to ask a question of Race. We'll tackle a few. I know Megan may have a follow-up question, and then I have one as well before we tackle those.
Yeah, I did want to mention, I totally forgot to mention when we were talking about build versus buy, we actually added into the resources that are attached to this, that there's a build versus buy handout that might be helpful. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Do you want me to go with a customer question?
Yeah, go ahead. And then I've got one that just popped up as well.
Okay, so this person says, if you have a one-stop portal, which contains, I don't know if this is a question or statement, but if you have a one-stop portal, which contains a wide, I think you meant wide universe of docs, you also need to have a good way to be able to search what documents you want. So I assume what the person is asking is, how have you ensured that you have good search? And how do you maybe measure whether the search is working?
Yeah, the search technology we actually use is proprietary, so I can't talk about the specific technology. But what I can say is searchability, and constantly honing that searchability to be better, is a really important thing. And nothing will replace testing. You need to bang on it and say, okay, I need to search 100 ways and 100 terms, and how is it coming up and how is it rendering? Because bad search is really one of the worst things that you can do in terms, you talked about engendering trust. If they can't search for it, they can't find it. So searchability is extremely important, and you have to test the heck out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Search is obviously a big thing that we help our customers with. But the one thing we like to say is search isn't magic, right? Search is not something where you just plug in a tool and it works. You have to think, you have to have a search strategy. So if you're using really structured content and you have a perfect taxonomy, then your search is going to be beautiful, right? Like that's just, no matter what tool you kind of go into, it's a lot easier. You can also, look at the search tool. Sometimes search tools work and sometimes they don't. So there's the technology behind it. There's the way your content is set up. There's a whole smattering of information that you need to know to make sure that your search is effective.
And sometimes it's about the standardization, right? I think that to kind of glom on to what Race was talking about, the standardized approach. Once we get everybody in sync, it's much easier, whether you have an IT person help you or you use a third-party vendor, to then say, here's our content. This is what it means. These are the cues you look for when people are searching, and the software can then deliver on that promise. And I think that's part of the frustration, is that, as Race pointed out earlier, we're creatures of habit. So if we haven't been doing it that way for the rest of our, previous lives, we may not want to do it that way tomorrow.
Right.
But convincing people is important.
Can I also say it's probably another advantage going with someone who really understands portals, technology, and the importance of search, because very often search is something that is thought about later. Oh, I built this beautiful thing, and then, well, how do I search it? Ooh, darn. So having some experience really matters.
Yeah. And I think adding on to that, I think one of the big issues that folks find themselves in is they think, oh, well, I'll just put a search bar at the top of a landing page, and then it'll take them to the training site, or it'll take them to the support site, or it'll take them to the doc portal. The problem with that is that I guess 10 years ago, that probably was a great idea. But the problem with it today is we expect this sort of Netflix-like experience, right? Where it just things are handed to you when you need them and you don't even have to search. The other problem is once you go off to the support site or go off to the doc portal, if they're not all connected and they're not all pulling the same content, you end up in a tunnel where, in order to get out of that, you have to come all the way back and go back in another direction. And you don't always know if you want a support answer, a docs answer, or a training answer, right? So there are lots of sort of human issues with just putting a search bar there and letting it go to wherever it needs to.
I think everyone needs to think like a quality assurance, a QA person, and think how many, that old adage of how many clicks does it take to get to this?
Yes.
Every single click, every single step, every single barrier is going to annoy a customer. It's almost guaranteed.
Yes.
So the fewer of those you can do, which is another reason for gathering things in a portal, fewer clicks and happier customers, the better off you're going to be.
Here's a question that came in from from Twitter, and there's a couple questions Megan might want to check out in the little chat room we have. So one of them was, any surprises? Ask Race if there were any surprises that he discovered after bringing content together in one place. Did you discover, like, wow, people really like this? Or was there some type of content that by putting it together with the other content, you discovered its popularity or its utility? The example they gave was video documentation. She was like, when we put our video documentation and our documentation together, we noticed that we could see that there was a clear preference for some kinds of content, and we never had that information until we had the data. And so they
that's an interesting point. I guess that is true. I'm trying to come up with an exact example, and I don't want to manufacture something because I only try to tell the truth. All of our different deliverables were already being accessed fairly robustly.
Yeah.
But we were getting complaints about, having to find things, even internally from our own support people. So we certainly had a lot of people discover things that they would not otherwise, because it was all on one page. That absolutely happened. We have one particular tool that many customers really loved, but until it was linked there, customers were telling me, including internally, oh, I didn't know we had that. And they would never have discovered this very, very useful bit of information that we normally deliver had it not been on the portal.
Nice. Yeah, and I think to a certain degree, not only have you unified the content, but you've unified the analytics, right? So you're not looking at the engagement rate of this content and the engagement rate of this content and trying to figure out how they map together. So I think that's a big benefit. So a question from the audience: stakeholders want us to prove the positive ROI of investing in improvements like a centralized documentation portal. Did you find and use any examples from the industry that could support you with facts regarding the numbers? That's an interesting question.
I'm going to be candid and say I'm not 100% sure since I didn't build it. What I can say is I do know that they referenced a lot of standard industry things as well as came up with some very creative solutions, but I can't honestly answer that.
Okay.
That's all right.
We can follow up with
everything.
that person later.
Yeah,
I've got
so
some
you're not
thoughts.
supposed to know everything about Oracle PeopleSoft.
Right.
How did you see success, the results basically after switching to the unified portal kind of methodology? Were you able to track and measure improvement in case deflection or time to close customer cases, or was there some other metric that you would be willing to share that would be something other people might want to look for as well?
Yeah, we absolutely have metrics. I'm not willing to share the metrics,
Okay.
but we absolutely have metrics by which we can judge that we are, closing cases faster. We are, we have less time to info, for lack of a better way of describing it, to make sure that they can get to information more quickly. We absolutely have customer satisfaction information where we know that they're more satisfied. So we had some metrics, definitely, but I can't share any specifics.
Excellent. So one of our audience members asked, where on Twitter can you view the discussions of these webinars? Well, if I were savvy enough to have an extra hand over here, I would be tweeting right now and managing that. But some folks just hit me out of my Twitter account because they know I'm active on there. And so they use it as a second way to get to me in order to get their question on the air. It's not actually a formal thing. Megan, there's also a question about the challenge. Do you want to read that question?
Yeah. General question. What was the biggest challenge in coalescing a huge amount of content, some probably very historical, they say, into a single portal?
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, we were very lucky to have a woman who works with us, Jessica True, who I consider a genius, who was able to gather everything and do a lot of research that, had she not been the subject matter expert that she is and had been so familiar with the material, that I'm not sure we could have gathered it together so well and in such an organized way, and to make sure that we didn't miss anything. Obviously, you ask your constituency, so everybody within the information development or tech doc department, you query them and say, what are all the deliverables you're doing, and et cetera. But she already knew an awful lot. So she was able to pull together a prototype and then eventually the final product far more efficiently than somebody who came in cold and had to sort of gather that. So I think having a sit down, let's say you're going to do a portal and you're going to gather all this information, sit down with every stakeholder who produces those deliverables and make sure that you list them out and which ones have the highest priorities, which ones need to be seen in that top third of the page, all that kind of information, and get that information up front. So the challenge for us was luckily not too bad because we had such great people who did it. But if I were doing it in a new company, I'd be having a lot of one-on-one and group meetings and making sure I had all those deliverables gathered into one place.
Nice.
Excellent. There's also another question here from an audience member. This will probably be our last one for the show, except for the closing question. What is your preference of methodology for aggregating and retrieving content across multiple heterogeneous content silos to deliver a truly personalized experience? Do you prefer a retrieval and assembly of content components across multiple repositories using traditional search technologies, or a dynamic component assembly using ontologies and knowledge graphs generated from the intelligence in the content source object?
Good question.
Yeah, detailed as it may be.
Good question. Smart person. Probably smarter than I am in some of the things that they are talking about. I am going to say I'm not 100% sure what I would do. Does that make sense? So here's the guiding principle that I use always, and it's simplicity. And the simplest way to get the information aggregated into one place is probably the best solution usually. Whichever one that's going to be. So I know that's not a great answer for what they're asking, because they are probably talking about something with which I don't have the depth of knowledge that I should. But keep it simple. Whatever you do, keep it simple. Another reason to go with a portal company that knows how to put it together, because I think they understand the concept of simplicity.
Yeah, and I think there's also some confusion about something being complex doesn't have to be difficult, right? And so just because you hear that it's complex, it is complex. It's complex to create structured content and to map it appropriately. But if you do it, and then you harness, if you harness some other technology, let's say dynamic content delivery technology or portal or artificial intelligence, all the work that you did up front can be used to train those systems to do the things that you want to do better. And I think that in the end, that's what people are after. But you're right, Race, that getting there is all about taking steps.
Remember when we had the XML data discussion early on, and when it came on and everybody was freaking out going, this is awfully complicated. And then once they dove in and said, oh, this is so much better.
Right. So much easier.
Yeah. If you do it right, it's not as complicated, right? It's difficult. You have to do it right. You have to think about it ahead of time. But once you do that, then it can simplify it. Yeah, absolutely.
It takes a lot of forethought. But once the setup is done, it's so much easier.
Well, Race, you gave us a lot to think about on the show, so thank you for that. And so these nuggets of wisdom that you cranked out, including this, where is this is going to be my new tweet. Really good. So thank you. I know Megan and I both appreciate you making time and sharing the knowledge that you have at your company, helping other people understand how they might be able to bring all their content together in one place as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Race. And before everyone signs off, make sure you do give us a rating. There's a place for a 1 to 5 star rating located in the webinar viewing panel. Go ahead and fill that out, and then definitely leave comments. We read every single one of them. We really like to see how we can make this bigger and better for everyone next time.
Excellent. All right. Before we sign off, I just want to remind our viewing audience that each of you are entitled to 40% off discount on any ebooks available from XML Press, our partners with the Content Wrangler. You can check them out on the web or on your favorite shopping centers for books. But if you go to store.xmlpress.com, you can learn more about the books that are available and use the attachments section of our webinar viewing panel to gain the code that will give you the 40% savings. Also, I want you to know, before you go, I want to encourage you to be on the lookout for an email invitation to our next Content Advantage show. It's going to be super good. Tuesday, March 2nd, 2 weeks from now, when we chat with global content strategy guru Val Swisher of Content Rules about the role of standardization in the creation of personalized content at scale. Val's got a new book out from XML Press, and she's going to offer some advice on how to help you avoid the most common content personalization pitfalls. It's definitely a show you do not want to miss. So thanks for joining us. Until we see you again, be safe, be well, and keep doing great work. Thanks a lot to Race Bannon and to my co-host, Megan Gilhooly. Until next time, we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good one.
See you next time.